toddlers requested some yogurt this morning and we were running low, so I just decided to make it myself. They always have to have granola with their yogurt, so I made that first by adding some oats, cinnamon, maple syrup, a smidge of peanut butter, some coconut oil, some coconut flakes. I gave that a really good mix and also decided to add some peanuts in there as well. I transferred that over to my baking sheet, pressed it down, and then popped that in the oven. In the meantime, I poured some milk into my pot and heated that up on the stove. Once that barely reached a simmer, I let that cool off, pulled out my granola, sprinkled it with some cherries, cranberries, and some more coconut flakes. When my milk was lukewarm, I combined some of the leftover yogurt I have with the warm milk before pouring it back into my milk, covering that with a towel and letting it rest in a warm place for a few hours. By this time, my granola had cooled enough for me to break it up and put it away in a glass jar. Depending on the consistency you want your yogurt to be, you can let it sit for about 6 hours or overnight before popping it in the fridge for another few hours. Once I pulled my pot out of the fridge, I gave the yogurt a good mix and it was ready to serve. Put some yogurt in the bowls, topped it with the granola, added some raspberries, and obviously a drizzle of honey. I popped any leftovers in the fridge and they were so excited to have them. My husband's been on a real ice cream kick lately. We ran out of ice cream, so I decided to combine two of his favorite things, ice cream and cinnamon rolls, and make a cinnamon roll ice cream. I heated my milk mixture on the stove while I combined all of my egg yolks and gave that a good whisk before pouring in some of that hot milk. Then I transfer all of that back to the stove and let it thicken a little bit before adding it to a bowl with some heavy cream. Make sure to strain it just to get all the bits out. I added some vanilla and some more cinnamon before covering it with cling film and setting it in the fridge for a few hours. In the meantime, I made my cinnamon roll dough with some butter, some sugar. I used some whole wheat flour, a little bit of milk, and obviously some more cinnamon. I let that go until it all came together in a cohesive dough before transferring it over to a bowl. I placed this in the fridge until my mixture was cool, and right before churning my ice cream, I made a quick cinnamon swirl that I would drizzle on top of the ice cream. Once all of my ingredients were prepped, I turned on my ice cream churner and poured in my ice cream mixture. I let that go until it thickened up before adding my cinnamon roll dough and letting that go for another few minutes. Once it looked like soft serve, I transferred it over to my storage container. It needed a little bit more, so I drizzled it with my cinnamon swirl and some more of the dough that was left over, and then it was ready to go in the freezer for a few hours. By this time, both Lucky and I couldn't wait any longer, so we had it, and it was so good that he stole that bowl and I made myself another bowl. The different textures were so perfect. He actually ended up finishing that whole tray of ice cream, so I'm making a new batch. Here's everything I eat in a day as someone that loves to cook but is also 37 weeks pregnant. I start off with some herbal tea and then take my prenatals. I hate the taste of water, so I mixed in some apple juice today. I was also craving some fresh pressed orange juice, so I made that and then got started on breakfast. Crepes are so much better than pancakes, so today I made a rooibos tea crepe with some vanilla peach puree that I had in the fridge and topped it with some strawberries. These flavors together really hit the spot. I ended up making a banana date milkshake before moving on to making my lunch. You guys know I need to have my midday beverage, so today we did a blueberry vanilla iced tea. For lunch, I wanted something just light and refreshing and super simple, so I made a crispy rice salad. I chopped up a bunch of vegetables I had in the fridge, which was cucumber, carrot, some purple radishes, edamame, green onions, cilantro, and then I had some leftover rice as well that I crisped up in my pan before adding my sesame miso dressing and also some chilies. I gave that a good toss and then remembered that I also cut up some avocado, so I added that on top. I had some errands to run, so for dinner I made a slow roasted Mediterranean lamb, popped that in my Dutch oven with some warming spices and let that go for about 3 hours. I wanted something sweet, so I cut up some mango, papaya, and I made a coconut mousse with some coconut sugar on top. When the lamb was close to being done, I made my flatbread dough and let that rest for about 30 minutes while I made my date gremolata. When my lamb was tender and falling apart, I shredded it up and returned it back to the pot to soak up all the juices while I fried up all of my flatbreads. This meal, you guys, was so good. So I put down my flatbread, some lamb on top, my date gremolata. I added some fresh parsley and some chili, also a sprinkle of sumac. Wow, And then I was craving some cereal. Everyone loves French toast in my house, so when my toddlers requested it this morning, I decided to just make it for them. I started off by making my brioche bread by adding some yeast, flour, milk to my bowl and letting that activate. Then I added in all of my eggs, some more flour, and kneaded that dough until it all came together. Once it started coming together and forming a dough, I cut up some butter and slowly dropped that in until it was all incorporated. Then I covered that and let that rise until it was doubled in size before portioning it off in 3 portions. I rolled those out until they were about 9 inches long. I pinched the top together and then braided it up and tucked the bottom under so it would create a seal. I placed my dough into my loaf pan and let that rise until it was about doubled in size. In the meantime, I prepped my mixed berry compote by combining some frozen berries with some maple syrup and lemon juice and letting that reduce on the stove. Once that came together, I transferred it over and let that cool in my bowl. I brushed my brioche with some egg wash and popped that in the oven for about 35 minutes before pulling it out. I let that cool while I made a quick whipped cream, because who doesn't love French toast with whipped cream on top? At this point, my bread was cool enough to slice, so I cut it into slices, making sure that they weren't too thin before I combined my egg with some heavy whipping cream, vanilla, and cinnamon to dip my bread in. I coated both sides and then placed my bread in a buttered up pan. I fried it until it was golden brown, and then it was time to plate. I put my French toast down, topped it with the mixed berry compote, the whipped cream, and I also had some passion fruit lying around, and the kids love it, so I put that on top, and they absolutely loved it. Mango sticky rice is all I can think about, and after ordering it and getting the tiniest portion, I just decided to make it myself. We buy a lot of mangoes when they're in season, so I started off by making some mango ice cream. I diced up my mango, added them to a blender with some sweetener and lemon, gave that a good blend, then combined some heavy cream, milk, and some sugar, added my mango puree, and let that chill in the fridge before transferring it over to my ice cream churner. I churned it for about 20 to 30 minutes until it reached a soft serve consistency, and then I popped that in the freezer while I got started on my sticky rice. I had the rice soaking the night before and added it to my steamer. I let that steam while I started on my coconut sauce that was going to go in with the rice, which was coconut milk and some sweetener and a pinch of salt. Once my rice was finished steaming, I added my coconut milk to it, covered it, and just let it sit while I made thicker coconut sauce to go on top of the rice. I let that reduce on the stove while I finished up prepping all of my other things, which was slicing some mango, and by this time my rice had soaked up all of that coconut milk, so it was time to plate. I put down my rice, added my mango, added some of that coconut cream on top with some sesame seeds, and then obviously had to pull out my mango ice cream. The cold ice cream went perfectly with the warm rice, and this was absolutely divine.